Rex's explosive snarl shattered the mountain silence like thunder, his 100-pound frame coiling into predatory readiness as Captain Foster stumbled backward down the aircraft steps. The German Shepherd's lips peeled back from gleaming fangs, amber eyes blazing with an intensity that made the air itself feel electric. Drew Patterson's blood ran cold. In 3 years together, Rex had never shown aggression toward anyone, yet here he stood like an ancient guardian blocking the path to their salvation. Foster's confident pilot swagger crumbled as she clutched her credentials with trembling fingers, her crisp navy uniform suddenly looking like a costume that didn't quite fit. "Rex, down! She's just the pilot!" Drew commanded, but his voice seemed to bounce off the dog's unwavering focus like stones off armor. Logan's small hand found his father's belt, the 8-year-old's shallow breathing creating wisps of vapor in the Colorado dawn, while his wide eyes reflected the same primal fear that made Rex's hackles rise like warning flags. "I've never seen anything like this," Foster stammered, her professional composure dissolving into something that looked suspiciously like genuine terror. "Dogs always trust me." Rex's growl deepened to a sound that seemed to emerge from the earth itself, his intelligent gaze fixed not just on the woman before them, but on something hidden beneath the gleaming aircraft. What lay waiting in that darkness would change everything they thought they knew about trust. 2 hours earlier, Drew had been standing in their cramped kitchen, watching Logan struggle to climb 3 simple steps without gasping for breath. The boy's lips carried that telltale blue tinge that sent ice through Drew's veins every time he saw it. Medical bills covered their kitchen table like autumn leaves, each one marking another piece of their world that had slipped away. The local clinic had delivered their verdict with clinical precision. Logan needed specialized cardiac surgery that only Denver Children's Hospital could provide. Time wasn't a luxury they possessed. It was a countdown that grew shorter with each labored breath his son took. Drew's calloused fingers traced the edge of his final paycheck from Murphy's Auto Repair, the numbers mocking him with their complete inadequacy. Commercial flights to Denver were booked solid for the next week, and Logan couldn't wait that long. The boy's condition had deteriorated rapidly over the past 72 hours, his small body fighting a battle it was slowly losing. Drew had called every airline, every charter service, every contact from his military days who might know someone with a plane. Most had quoted prices that would bankrupt him twice over, but desperation had a way of making impossible choices seem reasonable. Rex had sensed the tension radiating through their small home, following Logan everywhere with protective vigilance that bordered on obsession. The dog's intelligent eyes seemed to understand that something fundamental was wrong, that their small family unit faced a crisis beyond his ability to fix with loyalty alone. The charter company in Clearwater had felt like divine intervention when they'd finally called back. Captain Foster's voice had been warm and professional over the phone, her credentials impeccable according to the dispatcher who'd vouched for her personally. Thousands of flight hours, spotless safety record, and a reputation for handling medical emergencies with compassion and skill. The price would drain Drew's savings and mortgage their future, but watching Logan struggle for each precious breath made any sacrifice worthwhile. He'd arranged to meet Foster at the small airfield outside town, where her private jet would carry them to Denver and the hope that waited there. Everything about the arrangement had seemed routine, professional, exactly what a desperate father needed to hear. The drive to Clearwater Regional Airport had felt like traveling toward salvation. Logan had dozed fitfully in the passenger seat, his small chest rising and falling in the shallow rhythm that had become their new normal. Rex had positioned himself in the truck bed with military precision, alert and protective despite the early hour. The airfield was nothing more than a single runway and a modest terminal building, but it represented hope in its purest form. Drew had helped Logan from their battered pickup truck, the boy's weight seeming to grow lighter each day as his condition worsened. Foster's aircraft gleamed on the tarmac like a silver promise, its engines humming with quiet confidence, that everything would work out exactly as planned. Captain Foster had emerged from the terminal building with the kind of professional stride that inspired immediate confidence. Her uniform was crisp and perfectly fitted, her smile warm and genuine as she'd introduced herself with a firm handshake. She'd asked about Logan's condition with what seemed like authentic concern, nodding sympathetically as Drew explained the urgency of their situation. Her pilot's badge caught the morning sunlight as she'd knelt to Logan's eye level, speaking to him with the gentle authority of someone accustomed to reassuring nervous passengers. Everything about her demeanor had suggested competence and compassion, exactly what Drew had prayed for during the sleepless nights leading up to this moment. Rex had been calm during these initial interactions, showing none of the agitation that would soon transform him into something Drew barely recognized. The explosion of Rex's protective instincts had come without warning, transforming the peaceful morning into something that felt like a combat zone. Drew's military training kicked in automatically, his eyes scanning for threats, while his body positioned itself between Logan and whatever danger Rex had detected. Foster's reaction was equally telling. Her professional composure cracked like thin ice, revealing something underneath that made Drew's survival instincts scream warnings he couldn't yet articulate. The woman's hands shook as she fumbled with her credentials, her eyes darting between Rex's snarling face and the aircraft behind her, with the kind of desperation that suggested secrets far darker than simple nervousness around aggressive dogs. "I don't understand what's gotten into him," Drew said, his voice carrying the weight of genuine confusion mixed with growing suspicion. Rex had been his constant companion through the worst period of their lives, and the dog's judgment of character had never failed them before. Foster attempted another smile, but the expression sat wrong on her face, like a mask that had shifted slightly out of alignment. "Sometimes animals react to the electromagnetic fields around aircraft," she offered, her explanation sounding rehearsed despite its technical accuracy. "The frequency of the engines can affect their hearing in ways that make them aggressive." Her words carried the ring of someone who'd prepared for exactly this situation, which raised questions Drew wasn't sure he wanted answered. Logan pressed closer to his father's side, his young instincts picking up on the adult tension swirling around him without understanding its source. "Daddy, why doesn't Rex like the lady?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The innocent question cut through the complex dynamics like a knife, reducing everything to its simplest terms. Rex didn't dislike aircraft or engines or electromagnetic fields. His reaction was specifically targeted at Foster herself, personal and immediate, in a way that suggested the dog had detected something fundamentally wrong about their supposed savior. Drew found himself studying Foster's face with the analytical skills his military service had burned into his consciousness, cataloging micro-expressions and inconsistencies that might reveal hidden truths. Foster's pilot badge hung slightly askew on her chest, as if it had been hastily pinned in place rather than worn with the casual familiarity of long practice. Her shoes were wrong too, expensive leather pumps rather than the practical footwear most pilots preferred for long days on their feet. These details might have been meaningless individually, but together they painted a picture that made Drew's trained intuition sound alarm bells he couldn't ignore. "Your flight plan to Denver," he said casually, watching her face for reactions. "What route are you planning to take?" Foster's response came too quickly, too perfectly memorized, like someone reciting information rather than discussing familiar territory with the natural flow of genuine expertise. Rex's behavior grew more agitated as Foster attempted to approach the aircraft, his massive body language broadcasting warnings that even Logan could understand. The dog's focus never wavered from Foster, but Drew noticed how Rex's attention also drifted periodically toward the aircraft's cargo compartment, as if something there triggered the same protective instincts that Foster herself had awakened. The morning air carried the scent of jet fuel mixed with something else, a chemical odor that Drew's explosive ordnance disposal training recognized but couldn't quite place. His hands unconsciously checked his watch, a nervous habit from his military days that helped him process stress and maintain focus during uncertain situations. "Perhaps we should try a different approach," Foster suggested, her voice climbing slightly in pitch as stress began to crack her professional veneer. "I could have ground crew help restrain your dog while we board." The suggestion struck Drew as fundamentally wrong on multiple levels. Rex wasn't some unruly pet that needed restraining, and Foster's eagerness to separate them from their protector raised red flags that his intuition couldn't ignore. Logan's breathing had grown more labored during the confrontation, each shallow breath reminding Drew of the medical emergency that had brought them here in the first place. The weight of impossible choices pressed down on him like a physical force, creating pressure that made clear thinking almost impossible. Foster made another attempt to approach the aircraft steps, moving with deliberate slowness that suggested someone trying not to startle a dangerous animal. Rex's response was immediate and uncompromising, a sharp bark that echoed across the small airfield like a gunshot, freezing Foster mid-stride. The sound carried authority that transcended species barriers, and Drew saw genuine fear flicker across Foster's face before she could mask it with professional annoyance. That fear was disproportionate to the situation, revealing depths of anxiety that went far beyond simple concern about an aggressive dog blocking access to her workplace. Her hand moved instinctively toward her jacket pocket before jerking away, the aborted gesture suggesting someone accustomed to carrying something they shouldn't. "Your dog has some serious behavioral issues," Foster said, her attempt at authority undermined by the tremor in her voice that she couldn't quite control. This kind of unprovoked aggression could be dangerous to other passengers. The criticism of Rex struck Drew like a physical blow, challenging everything he knew about his loyal companion. Rex had been Logan's constant guardian during the boy's illness, showing infinite patience during medical procedures and offering comfort during the long nights when breathing became a struggle. The suggestion that Rex was somehow dangerous revealed more about Foster's character than about the dog's temperament, creating another crack in the facade of competence she'd worked so hard to maintain. Drew's phone buzzed with a text from Denver Children's Hospital, confirming Logan's appointment and emphasizing the critical nature of the timing. The message served as a stark reminder of what hung in the balance, creating pressure that made his chest feel tight with competing loyalties. Logan needed this flight desperately, needed the specialized care waiting in Denver, but something fundamental was wrong with their supposed salvation. Rex had never steered them wrong before, and his current behavior suggested a level of danger that went far beyond simple dislike of strangers. The dog's protective stance remained unwavering despite the confusion and conflict swirling around him, his loyalty absolute even when his warnings weren't understood. The standoff continued as clouds began gathering over the distant mountains, threatening weather that could complicate any flight plan regardless of the pilot's true intentions. Foster checked her watch repeatedly, her movements becoming increasingly agitated as time passed without resolution. Drew noticed how her gaze kept shifting between the timepiece and the horizon, as if operating on a schedule that had nothing to do with Logan's medical needs. The realization sent a chill down his spine that had nothing to do with the mountain air. What if this flight had purposes that extended far beyond simple medical transportation? What if their family's crisis was being exploited for reasons he couldn't yet comprehend? Logan tugged at Drew's sleeve, his young voice cutting through the adult tension like a blade of pure innocence. "Daddy, why is Rex protecting us from the airplane lady?" The question hit Drew like lightning, illuminating truths his conscious mind had been struggling to accept. Rex wasn't protecting them from aircraft or engines or electromagnetic fields. He was protecting them from Foster specifically, recognizing something about her that triggered every protective instinct in his powerful frame. The dog's behavior wasn't behavioral dysfunction. It was a warning system operating at frequencies beyond human perception, detecting dangers that logic and training had failed to identify. Drew made his decision with the sudden clarity that comes from trusting instinct over analysis. "We're not flying today," he announced, his voice carrying the finality of absolute conviction. Foster's reaction was immediate and revealing. Relief flashed across her features so quickly that someone not trained in reading micro-expressions might have missed it entirely. That relief was followed immediately by what looked suspiciously like panic, as if Drew's decision had disrupted plans that extended far beyond their simple charter arrangement. "But your son's medical condition," Foster protested, her concern sounding hollow and rehearsed. "Any delay could be catastrophic for someone in his condition." Rex's posture relaxed slightly at Drew's announcement, though he maintained his protective position between the family and Foster. The dog's approval felt like validation of choices made on faith rather than evidence, confirmation that sometimes the most important decisions couldn't be justified through logic alone. Foster attempted one final persuasion, her desperation now obvious despite her efforts to maintain professional composure. "Charter flights like this aren't easy to reschedule," she said, her voice carrying an edge of urgency that seemed disproportionate to the situation. "The next available slot might be days away, and your son clearly can't wait that long." Her argument carried the weight of truth about Logan's medical needs, but something in her delivery suggested ulterior motives that had nothing to do with helping a sick child. Drew began walking toward their truck, Logan's hand secure in his grasp, while Rex maintained his vigilant guard position. Foster called after them with increasing desperation, her professional mask finally slipping completely. "You're making a terrible mistake," she shouted, her voice cracking with something that sounded like genuine terror. "Your son needs this flight more than you realize." The pilot's insistence on their participation felt wrong on every level, confirming Drew's growing suspicions that Foster wanted them on that aircraft for reasons that extended far beyond simple transportation services. Logan looked back at the gleaming jet with obvious disappointment, but his trust in his father's judgment remained absolute. As they reached the truck, Drew's military-trained ears picked up an unusual sound from the aircraft's direction, a subtle mechanical hum that didn't match the normal idle patterns of jet engines. Rex's ears swiveled toward the same sound, his alertness spiking once again, as if confirming Drew's observation. Foster had disappeared back into the aircraft, presumably to secure equipment or file flight plan changes, but her movements seemed rushed and furtive rather than routine. The pieces of an ominous puzzle were beginning to align in Drew's mind, creating a picture that made his blood run cold with the implications of what they might have narrowly avoided. Drew helped Logan into the truck's passenger seat, buckling the boy's seatbelt with hands that trembled slightly from residual adrenaline and the weight of decisions that could determine their future. Rex leapt into the truck bed with athletic grace, positioning himself to maintain visual contact with the aircraft, even as they prepared to leave. The dog's continued vigilance suggested that whatever had triggered his initial reaction remained an active threat, confirmation that Drew's decision to trust canine instincts over human desperation had been correct. Logan's breathing was labored from the morning's excitement, but his eyes held the unwavering trust of a child who believed his father could solve any problem through determination and love. "Are we going home, Daddy?" Logan asked, his voice carrying disappointment despite his faith in Drew's decisions. The question tore at Drew's heart like a physical wound. Home meant giving up on the specialized medical care Logan desperately needed, but staying could mean walking into a trap that endangered them all. The weight of parental responsibility felt crushing in that moment, as Drew grappled with choices that could determine his son's future, while operating on nothing more substantial than a dog's protective instincts. Yet Rex's unwavering conviction about Foster provided an anchor of certainty in the storm of doubt and fear that threatened to overwhelm his rational thinking. Before Drew could start the engine, his phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Foster's voice came through the speaker with barely controlled panic, her professional composure completely abandoned. "Mr. Patterson, "You don't understand the situation," she said, her words tumbling over each other in their urgency. "There are things in motion that can't be stopped now. Your participation is absolutely essential." The call's timing felt orchestrated, as if Foster had been waiting for them to reach the relative safety of their vehicle before making contact. Drew's suspicions crystallized into certainty. Whatever Foster was hiding, it was significant enough to risk exposing herself through desperate pursuit of passengers who were walking away. "Thanks, but we'll find another way," Drew replied, his tone leaving no room for negotiation while his free hand reached for the truck's ignition. Foster's response was immediate and chilling. "You don't understand. There are schedules that must be maintained, people counting on this flight happening exactly as planned. Your son's condition makes you perfect for what needs to happen." The words hung in the air like a confession, confirming Drew's worst fears about the true nature of their charter arrangement. Foster had revealed far too much in her desperation, exposing motivations that had nothing to do with providing medical transportation for a sick child, and everything to do with exploiting their family's crisis for darker purposes. Drew ended the call and started the truck's engine, the familiar rumble providing comfort in its normalcy, while Rex's bark from the truck bed served as punctuation to their escape. As they pulled away from the airfield, Drew caught sight of Foster in the rearview mirror, watching them leave from the aircraft steps, her posture radiating defeat and something that looked suspiciously like terror. Whatever had been planned for that flight would have to proceed without the Patterson family as unwitting participants, a realization that made Drew's hands shake as he contemplated how close they'd come to boarding an aircraft with a pilot whose true intentions remained hidden beneath a facade of professional competence. The drive back toward town felt like emerging from a nightmare into the safety of waking reality, though the weight of Logan's medical needs prevented any sense of true relief. Logan dozed fitfully in the passenger seat, exhaustion claiming him as adrenaline faded from his small system, while his breathing remained shallow and labored. Rex maintained his sentinel position in the truck bed, alert and protective, even in apparent victory over whatever threat Foster had represented. Drew's mind raced through the morning's events, cataloguing details that painted an increasingly sinister picture of what they had narrowly avoided, while simultaneously grappling with the reality that Logan's medical crisis remained unresolved. His phone buzzed with another urgent text from Denver Children's Hospital, this one more insistent in tone about the critical nature of Logan's appointment window. The surgical team's availability was limited, and delays could impact their ability to perform the complex procedure his son required. The message served as a painful reminder that escaping one danger had created another. Logan still needed medical attention that seemed increasingly out of reach with each passing hour. Drew pulled over at a gas station to consider their dwindling options, his heart heavy with the weight of impossible choices that pitted his son's immediate medical needs against instincts that screamed warnings about hidden dangers. While filling the tank, Drew noticed a news alert on his phone about increased security measures at Denver International Airport due to unspecified threats. The timing of the alert, combined with Foster's suspicious behavior and desperate insistence on completing their flight, created connections that made Drew's blood run cold with realization. He thought about Foster's nervous glances toward the aircraft's cargo area, her revealing slip about schedules and people counting on the flight happening as planned, and her disproportionate reaction to their decision to leave. The pieces of a larger puzzle began falling into place with terrifying clarity, suggesting that their family's medical emergency had been selected as cover for something far more sinister than simple transportation. Rex's head swiveled toward the distant airfield as a new sound reached their ears, sirens approaching from multiple directions with the urgent wail of emergency vehicles responding to a major incident. Drew shielded his eyes against the morning sun and saw smoke rising from the area they had left less than an hour earlier, confirmation that his worst fears about Foster's true intentions had been justified. The sight validated every instinct that had screamed warnings throughout their encounter, proving that Rex's protective behavior had saved them from becoming unwitting participants in something that required emergency response teams to contain. Logan stirred in his seat as the sirens grew louder, his young face creased with confusion at the dramatic sounds that seemed to follow them everywhere they went. "What's happening, Daddy?" he asked, his voice small and uncertain in the face of adult chaos he couldn't understand or process. Drew reached over to smooth his son's hair, drawing comfort from the simple contact, while his mind processed the magnitude of what they had avoided through nothing more than trusting a dog's protective instincts. Rex had saved them from becoming part of something that would have destroyed far more than just their small family, though the full scope of that salvation wouldn't become clear until later. Drew's phone rang again, this time showing a number he recognized as local law enforcement. Sheriff Martinez's voice carried the weight of official authority mixed with obvious relief that bordered on amazement. "Drew, we need you to come back to the airfield immediately," he said without preamble. "There's been a significant development regarding your charter flight, and your testimony will be crucial for our investigation." The sheriff's tone suggested that Drew's decision to leave had been more than justified. It had likely saved their lives, and potentially those of many others. Rex's bark of acknowledgement from the truck bed seemed to express satisfaction at the vindication of his earlier warnings. The drive back to the airfield felt surreal, like returning to a movie set after the cameras had stopped rolling and reality had reasserted itself. Emergency vehicles crowded the small facility, their lights painting the mountain landscape in alternating shades of red and blue, while specialized teams moved with the focused urgency of people dealing with a major threat. Bomb squad technicians in heavy protective gear worked with careful precision around the aircraft that had almost carried the Patterson family to an unknown fate. Sheriff Martinez approached their truck with the expression of someone who had witnessed something that challenged his understanding of normal criminal behavior and small-town safety. "Your dog saved a lot of lives today," Martinez said without preamble, his weathered hand reaching out to pat Rex through the truck bed's slats, while his voice carried the kind of respect usually reserved for decorated heroes. Foster, if that's even her real name, had enough explosive material in that cargo hold to level half of downtown Denver during rush hour. The sheriff's words hung in the air like smoke, carrying implications that made Drew's knees weak with retroactive terror and gratitude. Logan pressed closer to his father's side, sensing the gravity of adult conversation without fully grasping its meaning, while Rex accepted the sheriff's praise with the dignified composure of someone who had simply done what needed to be done. The FBI investigation team leader, a stern woman in federal tactical gear, introduced herself as Special Agent Rodriguez from the Domestic Terrorism Unit. "Mr. Patterson, we need to understand exactly what made you decide not to board that aircraft," she said, her tone suggesting that their escape had been more than lucky coincidence and bordered on miraculous intervention. Drew found himself struggling to articulate the subtle signs that had triggered his military-trained instincts: Foster's nervous behavior, the timing inconsistencies, and most importantly, Rex's unprecedented aggressive reaction to someone who should have been their salvation. The dog's behavior had been the deciding factor, though explaining that to federal investigators felt inadequate, given the magnitude of what had been prevented. Special Agent Rodriguez listened with the focused attention of someone cataloging evidence for a major federal case that would likely make national headlines. "Your dog's behavior prevented a catastrophic terrorist attack on Denver International Airport," she explained, her professional composure unable to completely mask her amazement at the situation's outcome. "Foster was planning to use your medical emergency as cover for transporting explosives into restricted airspace near one of the busiest airports in the country." The explanation made Drew's stomach churn with the realization of how close they had come to becoming unwitting accomplices in mass destruction, their son's medical crisis exploited as cover for unthinkable evil. Rex received attention from every law enforcement officer on scene, his status elevated from family pet to genuine hero in the span of a few hours. Logan watched with obvious pride as his beloved companion accepted praise and treats from grateful officials who understood the magnitude of the dog's contribution to public safety. The boy's breathing had improved significantly since the morning's stress had passed, as if relief itself had provided a form of medical treatment that no doctor could prescribe. A medic from the emergency response team approached Logan with gentle professionalism, offering to check his vital signs and provide supplemental oxygen if needed, treating the child with the special care reserved for someone whose family had just prevented a national tragedy. Special Agent Rodriguez returned with additional information that painted an even more chilling picture of their narrow escape from catastrophe. Foster's real name is Rachel Martinez, and she's been on federal watch lists for years, she explained, showing Drew a tablet displaying the woman's extensive criminal record and known associations. She's connected to several domestic terrorism cells and has been planning this attack for months, using your charter flight as the perfect cover for getting close to Denver International without triggering security protocols. The revelation made Drew's hands shake as he contemplated the innocent trust that had almost made them accomplices in mass murder, their love for Logan exploited as camouflage for unspeakable evil. The FBI offered to arrange immediate medical transport for Logan to Denver Children's Hospital, their federal resources making what had seemed impossible suddenly achievable through legitimate means. A specialized air medical unit was already being dispatched to provide the safe transportation that Martinez's aircraft had only pretended to offer. Logan's eyes lit up with hope as Drew explained that they would still reach the hospital in time for his surgery, just through means that didn't involve trusting their lives to a terrorist in disguise. The boy's resilience and trust in his father's decisions had been vindicated in ways that neither of them could have imagined when the morning began. Rex settled into his traveling position as they prepared for the legitimate medical flight, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to his earlier agitation around Martinez's aircraft. The dog seemed to understand that this new transportation represented genuine help rather than hidden danger, his relaxed posture providing final confirmation that Drew's decision to trust canine instincts over human desperation had been correct. Logan reached out to scratch behind Rex's ears, whispering words of gratitude that brought tears to Drew's eyes and smiles to the faces of watching federal agents who had witnessed something truly extraordinary. The flight to Denver in the medical helicopter was everything Martinez's charter flight should have been: professional, safe, and focused entirely on Logan's medical needs without hidden agendas or concealed dangers. Drew watched the Colorado landscape scroll beneath them while holding his son's hand, marveling at how close they had come to never seeing this view or any other. Rex traveled in the helicopter's cargo area, alert but relaxed in the presence of genuinely trustworthy medical professionals who treated his heroic status with appropriate respect and gratitude. Denver Children's Hospital received them with the kind of coordinated efficiency that comes from dealing with life-threatening emergencies on a daily basis, their medical team prepared and waiting. Logan was whisked into pre-surgical preparation while Drew handled the paperwork that would authorize the procedure his son desperately needed. The hospital staff's confidence and competence provided a sharp contrast to the morning's encounter with Martinez, reminding Drew of what genuine professionalism looked like when compared to its deceptive imitation. The surgery proceeded without complications, Logan's young heart responding well to the specialized procedure that would give him a chance at normal childhood activities and a healthy future. 6 months later, Logan was running through their backyard with the boundless energy of a healthy child, his surgical scars hidden beneath a Superman t-shirt that seemed appropriately symbolic of his recovery. Rex maintained his protective watch from the shade of an old oak tree, his role as family guardian unchanged despite his elevation to local legend status and national recognition. The simple normalcy of their recovered life felt like the greatest gift possible after their brush with unimaginable tragedy. Each ordinary day a reminder of what Rex's protective instincts had preserved. Drew often found himself reflecting on the morning that had changed everything, marveling at how close they had come to boarding an aircraft that would have made them unwitting participants in mass destruction. The what-if scenarios still gave him nightmares sometimes, but they also reinforced his gratitude for the instincts that had kept them safe and the loyal companion whose warnings had prevented catastrophe. Rex's legacy extended far beyond their family to touch the lives of hundreds of people who would never know how close they had come to danger. His protective instincts saving strangers he would never meet from a fate too terrible to imagine. Sometimes the most important battles are won not through violence or dramatic confrontation, but through simple trust in the wisdom of those who love us enough to stand between us and danger, even when that danger wears the most convincing disguise.